So I wanted to do a video about how I, as an antinatalist, view my own birth and life. And it's going to be pretty unscripted. I've got a few notes on points I want to hit on, but we'll see how it goes. One of the reasons I wanted to make this sort of video is because I think there are a lot of assumptions made about how antinatalists' lives are going or the sort of people we are. And whilst I think they're accurate for some antinatalists' lives, they're not accurate for all antinatalists' lives. And a lot of the assumptions I see made aren't accurate to my life. And these are assumptions like, our lives aren't going well, we're depressed, we actively look back on our births with lament, we're anti-life, all this kind of stuff. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to make this video about how I, as an antinatalist, view my own birth and life, because it doesn't fit into loads of those assumptions. Like, you don't need to be depressed or hate your own life to be an antinatalist. It doesn't have to come from hatred. And don't get me wrong, for some antinatalists, it does come from a disdain. But it doesn't have to. Like, it can come from a place of care as well. And actually, the thing that sort of inspired me to get up and do this video was I just had to go get it. I've just finished this book, so Begetting by Mara van der Lucht. I have no idea if I'm saying her last name right, so if she ever, for whatever reason, sees this video, I apologize so much. But anyway, so at one point in the book, and I can't remember what page it is, I'll put it in the description, she talks about like the different framings that antinatalism can have. And she discusses how like certain people can appreciate or even love their own life, but recognize that life isn't worth passing on, or isn't something that should be passed on. And she goes on to talk about this woman, Etty Hillesum, who I'm probably going to do like a separate video all about. And this is a bit of the video I have made some notes for because there was stuff I needed to remember. But basically, she was a Jewish woman who, during the Second World War, she fell pregnant in the lead up to when she was eventually going to be taken to a death camp by the Nazis and killed. And it's a super interesting story, which is why I want to do sort of like a whole video just on that. But basically, Mara, the author, uses Etty as an example of one of these people who really she seems to really love life, really appreciate her own existence, but sees life as something that she would never pass on to someone else. And actually, Masahiro Morioka, who's a Japanese academic who I don't think is an antinatalist, but he's very interested in antinatalism, he's spoken about the topic of birth affirmation before in at least one of his essays. And again, this bit I had a bit of notes on, so I'm actually going to read out a section from one of his papers. I have advocated in my books and papers the concept of birth affirmation, which means that I am truly glad that I have been born. This birth affirmation is also a very personal one. I do not believe that all people should affirm their own birth. I believe that the possibility of birth affirmation is open to all, but it is up to each individual to decide whether to pursue this possibility. And I also believe that birth affirmation does not necessarily lead to a life of high value. Furthermore, birth affirmation is not necessarily in conflict with anti-procreationism. It is possible that an anti-procreationist devotes all her life to the promotion of anti-procreationism, and as a result, her attempt becomes successful and she reaches a state of birth affirmation and feels happy to be able to achieve her ultimate goal. And again, it was reading about this idea of birth affirmation that made me want to make this video. So very basically, obviously as an antinatalist, I think it's wrong to bring new sentient beings into existence. I think coming into existence is a harm. And it's a belief I'm like intellectually engaged in. I came at it because I heard arguments for it and I was convinced by those arguments. And then over time, my emotions have become more engaged, not totally engaged, but like more engaged with the idea as well. And actually, since finding out about it and becoming an antinatalist and also doing these videos, I've become like intensely interested in the idea as well. And I love doing the videos like my one on Marie EU and other ones where it takes loads of research. But anyway, getting back to it. So yeah, like this steady flow of like new beings coming into existence, my emotion is now engaged, and I see that as like a sad thing, knowing that for all of them like suffering is guaranteed, and for some really unlucky ones they're going to have like horrors happen in their lives, which luckily I've been able to avoid so far. But all that is like quite separate from how I view my own life. I personally don't have like some inner lament about the fact that I was born. I don't sort of like look back at it with some inner sense of anguish. Like, I reckon recognize on an intellectual level that it would have been better for me if I hadn't come into existence, because I wouldn't have existed to care that I never came into existence, and I would have been spared all of the bad things that have happened in my life and will happen in my life as I get older, and obviously death as well. There's actually a quote by Emile Chiron, which I think I learned about pretty soon after becoming an antinatalist, and I just instantly connected with it and thought that like really accurately describes my own personal like relationship with antinatalism and, you know, my own having come into existence. So I've just got the quote up and it goes like this: "I do not hate life or desire death. I only regret being born." And this quote resonates with me so much. Like, I intellectually think, yeah, it would have been better if I hadn't been born. But like, now I'm here, I don't hate life, and I don't wait for the day longingly when I can exit this mortal coil, as they say. Now I'm here. I love, you know, traveling, learning, exploring, discussing ideas, building new projects, watching films, meeting new interesting people. Yeah, I enjoy doing all these things. I enjoy pursuing them, and I want to continue to exist so that I can pursue these things. Now, I wouldn't go as far as Mara or maybe Masahiro. I don't know if Masahiro says this, but as far as like Mara would maybe say of like loving life, yeah, I don't have a sort of love for life. I was going to say experience of life, but I don't think my experience of life, but my perception of life is still draped with this sort of like veil of pessimism. Like, I still look through life as fundamentally like a pessimist in terms of like a philosophical pessimist. Like, I recognize that all of the highs, all of the things I enjoy pursuing are essentially just, it boils down to, it's a distraction from the fact that my life is ultimately meaningless in a universe that doesn't mean anything. And now I'm here, I have these needs and desires that I've got to pursue, and I've got to pursue pleasure and avoid pain, and I'm on this treadmill of life until I die. So I understand that on an intellectual level, and I do see life in that way, but my actual experience of life is often one of interest and enjoyment, obviously recognizing that I wouldn't need either of those things if I hadn't have come into existence. And I guess another way that I see my own life is that I, you know, now I'm here, I have the capacity to help others, you know, help others improve their lot now that they're here as well, and also try and influence others so that they bring less sentient beings into existence, whether that is, you know, kids they would have had, or animals that they would have paid to be brought into existence in animal agriculture, or a range of other instances. And to be honest, I think this is kind of like a good way as an antinatalist to view your own coming into existence, of like intellectually recognizing that it would have been better not to have happened, but you're here now, it's worth enjoying, still recognizing the sort of pessimistic landscape of life, but going through it, experiencing it as something of interest and things that you want to pursue and stuff like that, and helping others, obviously. But I also recognize that obviously some people, this option just really isn't in any real way open to them, that they do live a life of anguish, you know, maybe they have deep depression or something like this. Some people aren't essentially lucky like I am, that I exist in such a way where a pursuit of such a life is actually a real option to me. And that's another reason I'm an antinatalist, because I know that even once we exist, some people are just going to have such a shit time that they aren't going to be able to make something resembling good out of a shit situation. So I also wanted to note a bit about the end of life as well in this video. So like the Emile Chiron quote says, I don't desire death. What I've found really interesting is when I've actually been researching antinatalist history, a lot of antinatalist sentiment is intertwined with this idea of pro-mortalism and wishing for the end to come sooner. One really like stark example of this is Abu al-Mari, who was a poet about, you know, 1,000 years ago in what is now modern day Syria. He was an antinatalist, he was a vegan, but it was also pretty clear, at least to me, and to be fair, I haven't read his poetry in a while, but I did a bunch of research on him a while ago, and it seemed pretty clear to me then that he also has pro-mortalist views. Again, that to me is not how I frame the end of life. Like, I wouldn't consider myself pro-mortalist, and I don't desire the end of life to come as quickly as possible. At the moment, my life is very decent, and I wish to continue pursuing all the things that I enjoy pursuing that I've spoken about. But obviously, I realize this isn't always going to be the case, right? Like, the very bad things in life can often stack up towards the end. So I obviously will get to a point, or presumably will get to a point, where one day I likely will elect to have assisted dying or something like this. I'm just kind of hoping that the UK actually has assisted dying by the time that I get to that age, in a very selfish way. Obviously, I wish it was here now for the people that need it now. But if I'm talking about my own life, I'm hoping that we have it for the time that I need it. And there have actually been discussions around assisted dying in the UK recently, like active discussions. And there was a discussion in Parliament recently, which I haven't watched back, but I will go and find it and link it in the description. But anyway, yeah, so that is how I, as an antinatalist, like view my own birth and life, and I guess death as well. Let me know what you, as antinatalists, or even if you're not an antinatalist, just anyone watching this, let me know how you view your own birth and life, and I guess death as well. Do you agree with me? Do you vehemently disagree with me? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.